I'm sorry, but Section 14, subsection C is very clear. This gate is not an authorized emergency access point.
Those were her words, to a firefighter, while the garage 2 houses down was on fire. Phil was in his driveway, in slippers and an undershirt, 67 years old, watching his garage wall turn black. The smell hit you before the smoke did. Burning wood, melted plastic, something chemical underneath. One of the crew moved toward the gate latch. Meredith stepped in front of it. Bathrobe, laminated rulebook, palm out flat.
This road is a designated aesthetic zone. I will not be authorizing access today.
Nobody moved. The truck was still idling. Somewhere behind us, Phil's garage cracked and popped from the heat. Phil looked over at me. Not angry, just exhausted. I wasn't there yet. I thought one conversation would fix this. One email. One reasonable adult in the room. I was wrong about all 3. What would you have done? Drop it below. Where are you watching from? Worst HOA story gets featured. My name is Garrett Webb. I'm a union electrician, 52 years old, and I've lived in Crestwood Commons since 2017. I moved here after a divorce, bought the corner lot, the one with the slightly overgrown hedges and the basketball hoop in the driveway that I kept telling myself I'd move before spring. I never did. I liked it there. My kids used it on weekends when they visited, and honestly, after everything that year, watching them shoot around in the driveway was about the best thing I had going. Crestwood is a planned community in central Ohio. 34 homes, mature oaks lining both sides of the street, the kind of neighborhood where people put out seasonal flags and pretend not to notice each other's Amazon boxes. Monthly HOA dues were $180. Nobody thought much about it. For years, the board was run by a retired contractor named Denny, who fixed problems with duct tape and common sense. Meetings lasted 20 minutes. Everybody went home happy. Then Denny retired, and Meredith Calloway moved in. She arrived in 2019, what she called her divorce upgrade. Bigger house, south-facing lot, and an apparently bottomless supply of righteous energy. She was on the HOA board within 4 months, president within 8. I remember the exact morning I found her first violation notice tucked under my windshield wiper. It was 6:30 a.m., still dark, and I was heading to a job site. The notice was printed on HOA letterhead, faintly warm from the printer, and it informed me that my basketball hoop was 11 inches too close to the street. 11 inches. I measured it twice. I paid the fine. I figured that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. The thing about Crestwood Commons that you need to understand is the back gate. It's a heavy, wrought iron gate installed between 2 blocks of the subdivision, opening onto a back access road that connects directly to the main township road. Emergency vehicles used it regularly. Fire trucks, ambulances, medical transport vans. It cut 3 full minutes off their response route. The fire department knew the code. The utility companies knew the code. Everyone who needed to know, knew. The crunch of gravel on that back road at 5:45 every morning was basically my alarm clock. I'd hear it from my bedroom window, a delivery truck, a utility van, sometimes Phil's medical transport pulling in twice a week. Phil Dennison, my neighbor 2 houses down, had bad knees and needed that van after his second surgery. He was 67, retired, and one of the genuinely good people you meet maybe a handful of times in your life. In the fall of 2022, Meredith decided the back access road was a problem, citing Section 14, subsection C of the HOA bylaws. The Community Aesthetics and Noise Abatement Clause, written in 2011 to address a dispute about someone's wind chimes, she declared the road a designated aesthetic zone and changed the gate code. She sent one email notifying homeowners, at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, to an address list that hadn't been updated since 2019. I found out the way most of Crestwood found out, from a confused UPS driver standing on my porch in cold November rain, soaking wet, asking if I knew why the back gate was locked. He smelled of diesel and frustration. I recognized both. I emailed the board that same night. No response. I showed up at the next meeting. Meredith slid a printed copy of Section 14 across the table and told me the vote had been procedurally completed. I drove home, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the clock started. 3 weeks after Meredith changed the gate code, Phil's garage caught fire. It started the way workshop accidents usually do. Paint thinner, a heat gun, a moment of inattention. Phil got out fast. He wasn't hurt, but by the time he made it to the driveway, the wall was already going. The fire truck arrived in 4 minutes. Textbook response time for our township. The crew came up the main road, assessed the situation, and immediately moved toward the back access road, the route they'd used a dozen times over the years for this exact part of the subdivision. Faster, cleaner, direct access to the rear of the properties. The gate was locked. New code. Nobody told them. The crew radioed dispatch. 2 minutes lost while they confirmed the situation. Then they looped around, the long way, the way that adds 3 minutes and 40 seconds to the response, per the official incident report I later requested from the Township Fire Department. The fire was contained. Phil was safe, but his garage wall took significantly more damage than it should have. The repair estimate came back at $6,200. His homeowner's insurance covered part of it, not all of it. Meredith watched from across the street in a fleece vest, arms crossed. She was visibly irritated, not by the fire, but by the fact that the truck had parked with 2 wheels on the grass median. She mentioned it to her neighbor Linda before the crew had even packed up their hoses. I stood in Phil's driveway after everyone left and looked at that gate. Then I took out my phone and photographed it. The new keypad, the locked latch, the posted notice Meredith had attached, a laminated card explaining that access required prior HOA authorization. Laminated. She had laminated it. That was the moment I stopped thinking about this as a neighbor dispute and started thinking about it as something else entirely. I asked Phil if I could request the incident report on his behalf. He said yes. Then I went home and started reading. Here's what I found. And this is the first thing I want anyone watching this to write down. In Ohio, and in most states across the country, any gate or barrier that controls emergency vehicle access to a residential subdivision is subject to fire marshal notification requirements. Specifically, Ohio Revised Code 3737.87 requires that any time an access code changes on a gate serving a residential community, the new code must be filed with the local fire marshal's office. Not emailed to residents, not posted on the HOA website, filed. With the fire marshal. Meredith changed the code. She never filed it. If your HOA changes the code on any gate that emergency vehicles use, they are legally required to notify the fire marshal. If they didn't, that's not a technicality, that's a liability. I called the township fire marshal's office on Monday morning. I was polite. I gave them the incident report number. I explained the timeline. The fire marshal, a woman named Bernice who had been doing this job for 22 years and had the phone manner of someone who did not enjoy surprises, listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said she'd look into it. I thanked her and hung up. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt the specific unease of a man who has just lit a fuse and isn't entirely sure how long it is. Turns out the fuse was shorter than I thought. Before Bernice could even send a preliminary inquiry letter, Meredith found out I'd made the call. Crestwood Commons has 34 homes and approximately 0 secrets. Word travels faster here than anywhere I've ever lived. Over fences, through Linda, via the Nextdoor app, sometimes seemingly through the walls themselves. Within a week, I received 2 things in my mailbox. The first was a formal censure notice from the HOA board, signed by Meredith and her 2 board allies, citing me for interference with board operations and creating a hostile community environment. The vote had been held at an emergency board meeting I was not invited to, notified of, or even informed existed until after it happened. The second was a new violation notice for my basketball hoop. Different clause this time. Section 9, subsection A, recreational equipment proximity. The hoop was now 8 inches too close to the street. It had somehow gotten closer since the last notice. I taped both letters to my refrigerator. Then I went to the garage, found a shoebox, and put them inside. I didn't know it yet, but that shoebox was going to become the most important object in this entire story. February came, and with it, the HOA annual meeting. I didn't find out about it until it was over. The notice had been sent by email, to an address list Meredith hadn't updated since she took over the board. 9 homeowners, including me and 4 of my closest neighbors, never received it. The meeting went ahead anyway. Quorum was technically met. 21 homeowners attended, which cleared the 15-person threshold in the bylaws. In 40 minutes, 3 things were voted into effect. Board terms were extended from 1 year to 3. The open comment period at meetings was eliminated, and a new $500 administrative fee was established for any homeowner who formally requested HOA records. On paper, it looked clean. I had no idea any of it had happened until my neighbor Constance, a retired woman 2 streets over who had once taken a roofing company to small claims court and won, called me the morning after and read me the meeting minutes over the phone. I sat with that for a minute. Then I drove to the county public library on my lunch break and started reading. I want to pause here because what I found is something I genuinely believe every homeowner in America should know. Ohio Revised Code 5312, the Planned Community Act, requires that written notice of any annual meeting where bylaw amendments will be voted on must be delivered by first-class mail to every owner of record. Not email, first-class mail, unless every single homeowner has signed a written waiver agreeing to accept email notice instead. No such waiver existed for Crestwood Commons. Meredith used email because it was cheaper and faster. She did not use it because it was legal. In most U.S. states, if your HOA fails to provide proper written notice before a meeting where bylaws are amended, those amendments are voidable, meaning a court can reverse them entirely. I drafted a formal written objection that night. I got 7 neighbors to co-sign it. Then I mailed it, certified, return receipt requested, to each of the 3 board members individually, and to the HOA's registered address. There is a specific satisfaction to pressing certified mail stickers onto envelopes when you know exactly what's inside them. Slightly gummy, faintly chemical smell. I pressed each one down slowly. 2 weeks later, Meredith responded. Not to my objection. She never acknowledged my objection. Instead, I received a lien notice. A lien against my property. $1,400 in unpaid administrative fees, she called it, citing 2 prior violation notices and several records requests. The lien was real. It had been filed at the county recorder's office and attached to my property record. If I tried to sell my house or refinance my mortgage, it would show up. Here's the thing about liens, though. They have to be accurate. And I had receipts, bank bill pay records showing I had paid both violation fines in full, on time, with confirmation numbers. The lien wasn't just aggressive, it was fraudulent. I called an attorney, not a full retainer, just a 1-hour consultation at $175. Her name was Frances. She specialized in property disputes, and she had the dry, unhurried manner of someone who had seen this exact situation before and found it mildly interesting rather than alarming. She looked at my folder for about 10 minutes, then she looked up. "She gave you a gift," Frances said. "A fraudulent lien isn't just a civil matter. Depending on how this develops, it can be criminal." I drove home, made a sandwich, and thought about that for a while. By this point, the shoebox on my shelf had company. The incident report, the certified mail receipts, the meeting minutes, the objection letter, the lien notice, the violation notices, including the one about the basketball hoop being 8 inches from the street, a measurement I was increasingly certain had never been taken by anyone with an actual tape measure. I put a sticky note on the outside of the box, just the number, 8 inches. I was keeping score, and I was, if I'm being completely honest with myself, starting to enjoy it a little. Not the situation. The situation was exhausting and expensive and genuinely stressful, but the documentation, the paper trail, the slow, methodical construction of a case that was getting stronger every single week, that part I was built for. Meredith had spent 2 years treating Crestwood Commons like her personal jurisdiction. She had never once considered the possibility that the quiet electrician on the corner lot was taking notes. Meredith started talking. Not to me. She hadn't spoken to me directly since the meeting where she handed me a copy of Section 14. She started talking to everyone else. At the neighborhood holiday cookie exchange, in the school pickup line, on the Nextdoor app, underneath a post about coyote sightings, where she pivoted mid-thread with, "And while we're discussing threats to community safety, I want homeowners to be aware that certain residents are actively working with outside legal parties to destabilize our HOA." She never named me. She didn't have to. There are 34 houses in Crestwood Commons. 2 of my fence-sitter neighbors started avoiding me at the mailbox. 1 stopped waving. I noticed, and I filed it away the same way I filed everything else. Not with anger, just with accuracy. But something else was happening at the same time. Something Meredith hadn't accounted for. Phil was talking too. Phil Dennison is not a confrontational man. He's 67, retired, moves a little slower since his second knee surgery, and has a gift for conversation that I, a man who has always preferred fixing things to discussing them, simply do not have. But Phil had been quietly seething since the morning his garage wall burned longer than it should have because a fire truck spent 3 minutes and 40 seconds finding another way in. He started walking the street, knocking on doors, telling his story. He wasn't angry about it, he was just clear. That gate delay cost me $6,200, he'd say, and I got lucky. What if it had been the house? What if someone had been inside? He didn't ask people to do anything. He just told them what happened. And then he'd say, "Talk to Garrett." 6 homeowners came to me in the span of 2 weeks, then 11. We started meeting on Sunday afternoons at Phil's kitchen table. Phil made chili, the real kind, the kind that smells up the whole house for hours, thick and smoky and a little too spicy, exactly right for February in Ohio. Constance brought a legal pad. A high school civics teacher from the north end of the street named Reuben showed up with laminated documents and a color-coded folder system that put my shoebox to shame. A logistics dispatcher named Marcus came because his medical supply deliveries had been rerouted twice since the gate change, and he was done being diplomatic about it. We called ourselves the Back Gate Committee, informally, with a certain amount of irony. Nobody made a logo. Our first move was a joint complaint filed with the Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Law Section, which oversees nonprofits in the state, including homeowners associations. The complaint cited 3 things: the fraudulent lien against me, the improperly noticed annual meeting, and the ongoing failure to comply with fire marshal notification requirements. 3 separate issues, 3 separate violations, filed together, in one document, with full supporting documentation attached. Constance handled the formatting. Reuben proofread it 3 times. I signed it last. We also called the local paper. The Millhaven Courier is a twice-weekly that covers our township. Not a major outlet, but the kind of paper where a reporter named Janelle actually answers her phone and actually shows up. We tipped her to the fire marshal inquiry. She called Bernice's office. Bernice confirmed an inquiry was active. That was enough for a story. It ran on a Thursday. Page 3. Headline: HOA Gate Controversy Prompts Fire Marshal Review. Meredith sent a letter to the editor, calling it one-sided and factually incomplete. The letter ran the following week. Janelle told me it generated more reader responses than anything the Courier had published in 2 years. And then something unexpected happened. One of Meredith's 2 board co-signers, a quiet accountant named Douglas, who had joined the board 18 months earlier because he thought it would be neighborhood civic involvement, called Francis's office. Not to make trouble, to ask a question. Hypothetically, he wanted to know, what kind of personal exposure might a board member face for co-signing a fraudulent lien if they hadn't known it was fraudulent at the time? Francis told him, very calmly, that board members who participate in filing a false lien can face personal liability under Ohio's wrongful lien statute, up to $2,500 per occurrence, plus attorney's fees, regardless of intent. Douglas thanked her and hung up. I found out about the call 2 days later. I went to the garage, found a second sticky note, and added it to the shoebox. Douglas. The crack, when it comes, doesn't always sound like what you expect. Reuben was the one who found it. While the rest of us were focused on the procedural fights, the lien, the meeting notice violations, the fire marshal complaint, Reuben had been doing something quieter. He's a civics teacher. Reading primary documents is not a hobby for him. It's a reflex. He'd been going through the original Crestwood Commons founding paperwork, all of it. The 2003 incorporation documents, the 2008 bylaw amendments, the 2011 aesthetics revision that gave Meredith her Section 14 ammunition, and then, almost by accident, the 2009 recorded plat. The plat is the official map of Crestwood Commons, filed at the county recorder's office when the subdivision was formally laid out. It shows lot lines, road widths, utility corridors. Most people never look at it. Most HOA presidents certainly never look at it. Buried in the notation section of that plat, in the dry, precise language of county land records, was a single sentence that changed everything. The back access road carried a permanent public utility and emergency access easement. Not a bylaw, not a board resolution, a recorded easement, a legal instrument attached to the land itself, filed with the county in 2009, predating Meredith's entire tenure on the board by a decade. The easement designated that road as permanently available for emergency vehicle and public utility access. It could not be reclassified as an aesthetic zone. It could not be gated in a way that blocked emergency access. It was not subject to HOA governance. Reuben photocopied it at the county recorder's office. He paid $3 for the copy. He brought it to Phil's kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon and set it down in the center without saying a word. We all read it. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Constance said very quietly, "She never had the authority to lock that gate. Not from day one." I took the photocopy to Frances. She read it once, then she read it again. Then she set it down on her desk and looked at me with the expression of someone recalibrating their estimate of a situation. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "County Recorder's Office," I said. "It's a public document, $3. She picked it up again. "This isn't just leverage," she said. "This is the whole case. Here's why. And this is the third thing I want anyone watching this to understand. A recorded easement is not an internal HOA rule. It is not something a board can vote to amend or override. It is a legal instrument recorded with the county government, and it runs with the land permanently. Violating it is not a procedural infraction. It's a property rights violation." The township itself, as the beneficiary of the emergency access easement, has independent legal standing to enforce it. If your HOA is restricting access to any road, path, or shared area, go to your county recorder's office and look up the original plat. Easements recorded on that document supersede any HOA rule ever written. That document was 17 years old. It had been sitting in the county recorder's office the entire time, available to anyone who looked. Meredith had governed as though it didn't exist, because she didn't know it did. I went home that evening and sat in my driveway for a while. The Ohio winter was doing its worst, the kind of cold that makes metal contract and groan. I could hear the wrought iron gate from where I sat, ticking in the wind. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. We met 3 Sundays in a row at Phil's kitchen table. Phil made chili every time. I think it was partly hospitality, and partly because Phil processes stress by cooking. And by the 3rd Sunday, the chili had reached a level of complexity that suggested he was processing quite a lot. Constance brought her legal pad. Reuben brought laminated documents. I brought the box, the shoebox, now thick enough that I'd had to add a rubber band around it. The strategy we built was not emotional. It was layered, simultaneous pressure from multiple directions, designed so that Meredith couldn't plug one hole without opening another. Frances handled the legal track. She filed in County Common Pleas Court on 2 separate grounds. The first was an easement enforcement action, asking the court to formally affirm that the 2009 recorded easement prohibited any gate configuration that blocked emergency access. The second was a wrongful lien claim under Ohio's Corrupt Activity Act, targeting Meredith personally, not just the HOA, for the fraudulent $1,400 assessment against my property. The personal targeting was deliberate. HOA boards often defend themselves using HOA funds, your own dues effectively, paying for their legal bills. A claim against Meredith individually meant she was defending herself with her own money. And the wrongful lien statute included a fee-shifting provision. If I won, she paid my legal fees. Frances explained it simply. Fee-shifting means she's not just risking losing, she's risking losing and paying for the privilege. On the regulatory track, we supplemented the fire marshal complaint with Reuben's easement discovery. We sent Bernice a full supplemental package, the 2009 plat, the incident report from Phil's fire, the timeline showing when Meredith changed the code and when she failed to file it. Bernice upgraded her inquiry to a formal administrative enforcement proceeding. That distinction matters. An inquiry is a question. An enforcement proceeding is a process with teeth. Mandatory corrective action orders, fines, and if the HOA failed to comply, a referral to the county prosecutor. On the governance track, Reuben found the mechanism we needed. Ohio's Planned Community Act allows homeowners representing at least 20% of units to petition for a special meeting to remove board members for cause. 20% of 34 homes is 7 homeowners. We had 11 signatures before lunch on the first Sunday. Reuben delivered the petition personally to all 34 households, not email. He walked every street, knocked on every door, stood on porches in February cold, and explained it in plain language. We're not trying to blow up the HOA, we're trying to run it the way it's supposed to be run. 13 households signed the supplemental support letter. 3 more said they'd show up to vote. And then there was the physical piece, the part that I, as a licensed electrician, had been quietly thinking about since the morning Phil's garage burned. The gate used a standard commercial keypad access unit, a LiftMaster controller in a weatherproof enclosure, the kind used in hundreds of subdivisions across Ohio. I knew the hardware. I knew the code. What I proposed to the group was something different. A Knox box. If you don't know what a Knox box is, here's the short version. It's a small, tamper-resistant steel box, about the size of a thick paperback novel, that mounts to a wall or post near an access-controlled gate. Inside it is a physical key to the gate. The only people who can open a Knox box are fire departments and police, using a master key that the Knox box company provides exclusively to emergency services. They are required by fire code in many jurisdictions for any access-controlled gate serving more than 20 residential units. I coordinated with the township and the fire department. I pulled the permits myself. The installation was fully authorized, citing the recorded easement and the active administrative enforcement proceeding as the legal basis. On a Tuesday afternoon, a fire department representative came out to Crestwood Commons, and we bolted a matte black Knox box to the stone pillar beside the back gate. Here is the elegant part. Once a Knox box is code required and installed, any HOA officer who removes it, blocks access to it, or changes the lock it references is not committing a bylaw violation. They are committing criminal obstruction of emergency services. We sent Meredith a certified letter explaining this. She sent back a letter calling the Knox box an unauthorized aesthetic modification. I read it twice, added it to the box, put a fresh rubber band around everything. The Knox box sat on its stone pillar, matte black, 3 inches wide, completely unremarkable to look at. The most important object in Crestwood Commons, and it looked like a mailbox for ants. Meredith escalated the paperwork. I want you to understand what I mean by that, because escalated the paperwork sounds almost funny until you're living it. In 11 days, she sent 23 violation notices. To me, to Phil, to Constance, to Reuben, to Marcus, to every member of the back gate committee she could identify. I received 4 personally. My basketball hoop, again. My mulch, which she described in writing as an unapproved color variant. A holiday wreath she claimed I had left up 11 days past the February 1st deadline. It was February 9th, and my truck, which she alleged was parked 1 foot over the invisible boundary between my driveway apron and the street. 1 foot. Over an invisible line, documented with a photograph taken, based on the timestamp, at 6:17 in the morning. I want to be clear. I did not respond to a single one of these notices. Not one. This was Francis's advice, and it was correct. Responding, even to dispute, creates a paper dialogue that extends the process and signals engagement. Instead, every notice went directly into the box, unopened, where it became part of a documented pattern of retaliatory enforcement. In property law, a systematic pattern of retaliatory HOA enforcement following a homeowner's legal complaint can support a claim for punitive damages. Every notice Meredith sent made that case stronger. She also called an emergency board meeting, herself, her remaining ally Warren, and a new recruit named Warren's neighbor Gerald, who had joined the board because he had a long-standing fence dispute with his neighbor and had confused "Meredith is angry" with "Meredith is competent." At this meeting, they passed a motion to impose a $250 per month emergency community security assessment on all homeowners to cover HOA legal defense costs. Emergency assessments are a real mechanism HOA boards can use, but they require proper notice, proper quorum, and documented justification. Meredith's meeting had none of these. The quorum was invalid. 3 board members out of a board that was supposed to have 5 seated members, with 2 seats effectively vacant due to procedural irregularities Reuben had already documented. The notice was sent by email, same day. The justification cited ongoing hostile legal action by certain homeowners, which is not, under Ohio law, a qualifying emergency. The assessment was void. We knew it was void. Meredith did not appear to know it was void, or did not care, which by this point had become her defining characteristic. Meanwhile, the Backgate Committee was doing something that looked, from the outside, like nothing. We went to work. We came home. We did not post on Nextdoor. We did not respond to Meredith's letters. We did not engage with her narrative on any platform. Ruben continued showing up to every HOA board meeting with his digital voice recorder and a printed copy of Ohio's nonprofit open meetings requirements. He set the recorder on the table at the start of each meeting. He said nothing else. Meredith attempted to have him removed from the second meeting, citing his recording as a violation of community decorum. Ruben produced the statute. The attempt failed. It was recorded. Constance, with the precision of a woman who had once won a small claims case on the strength of a dated invoice and a contractor's handwriting, handled the special meeting mailing. Every envelope addressed by hand, every certified mail receipt logged in a spreadsheet, 34 households, 34 return receipts, and then Douglas moved. Douglas, the accountant, the quiet one, the co-signer. He sent a registered letter to the full board, with a copy to Francis, formally resigning his board seat and disavowing his vote on the fraudulent lien. He stated in writing that he had not been informed of the fraudulent nature of the assessment at the time he co-signed it. He was not making accusations. He was simply creating a record. The HOA board was now legally inquirate. With Douglas gone, Meredith could not hold a valid vote on anything. Not the security assessment, not a rule change, not a motion to adjourn, with only herself and Warren present. The emergency assessment, already void on procedural grounds, became doubly void. Douglas mailed me a separate handwritten note. It said, "I joined the board to help the neighborhood. I don't think that's what I was doing. Good luck." I took it out of the envelope, read it twice, and laid it flat on top of everything else in the box. Not stacked with the violations, flat on top. Some things deserve their own space. 1 week before the special meeting, Meredith made her boldest move. She contacted a property management company called Pinnacle Community Solutions, a firm that managed several Central Ohio HOAs, and signed a 3-year management agreement on behalf of Crestwood Commons. Using her remaining presidential authority, she transferred day-to-day HOA operations to Pinnacle, including signature authority over the HOA bank account. On paper, it was a genuine poison pill. With Pinnacle controlling the bank account, the Backgate Committee couldn't use HOA funds to pay for the special meetings required notices, facilities, or any other operational cost. It would strangle the removal process financially before it could happen. She sent a letter to all homeowners informing them that, in the interest of professional governance, she had engaged expert management, that the special removal meeting was under review for procedural compliance, and that all future homeowner communications should be directed to Pinnacle. I'll give her this. It was her most sophisticated move of the entire 18 months. It showed actual strategic thinking. It was also, like almost everything else she had done, fatally undermined by her failure to read the law before acting. Francis reviewed the management agreement the same day we received a copy. It had been signed by a single board member, Meredith, without a board vote, without quorum, without advance notice to homeowners. Under Ohio's Planned Community Act, contracts exceeding 1 year or committing HOA funds above the board's pre-authorized spending threshold require a full board vote with proper quorum. The Pinnacle agreement was 3 years. It committed $2,400 per month. It was, as Francis put it without any particular drama, void ab initio, invalid from the moment it was signed. Francis sent Pinnacle's legal department a letter. Certified, overnight delivery. It outlined the lack of board authority, the quorum deficiency, the statutory violation, and the potential recovery action for any funds already drawn. She carbon copied the Ohio Attorney General's office, and, for good measure, the State Licensing Board for Property Management Companies, which maintains its own standards about managers knowingly entering into void contracts with HOA officers acting outside their authority. Pinnacle withdrew from the agreement within 48 hours. Their attorney called Francis to discuss the situation. Francis, I was later told, was extremely pleasant about it. The week before the special meeting, Crestwood Commons went quiet. I went to work every morning, came home, made dinner, watched some television. The basketball hoop stood in the driveway, exactly where it had always stood, 8 inches from wherever Meredith had decided the street began. My kids were coming down the following weekend. I was planning to grill. Phil walked his street every evening the way he'd done since his wife passed 3 years ago. Slow, unhurried, waving at whoever was out. More people waved back than usual, I noticed. The fire marshal's enforcement order was finalized and formally served on the HOA. It required immediate filing of the gate code with the fire marshal's office, the Knox box to remain permanently in place, and the emergency access easement to be formally acknowledged in Crestwood's governing documents. Non-compliance would trigger a $500 per day fine, assessed against the HOA and its officers personally. The wrought iron gate stood in the February cold, Knox box bolted to its stone pillar, exactly where we'd put it. The back access road behind it was open, the way it should have been for 2 years. And then, the part I genuinely did not plan for, did not anticipate, and could not have invented if I tried. Meredith's basement flooded. A pipe in her utility room, frozen solid during the worst cold snap of the year, burst while she was asleep. The water ran for several hours. Her neighbor Linda noticed the ice sheeting down Meredith's driveway at 6 in the morning and called it in. The response crew, fire department, because a compromised gas water heater was involved, arrived quickly. Standard dispatch. They came up the main road and, per protocol, moved toward the back access road. The gate opened. The Knox box worked. Response time, 4 minutes, 30 seconds. The water heater, already stressed by the flooding, ignited. The basement sustained significant smoke and heat damage before the crew got it under control. Meredith was not injured. She was fine. The back gate, the gate she had locked, the gate she had defended with a laminated rule book, while Phil's garage burned, had just helped save her house. I'm not going to say anything else about that. Some ironies are complete on their own. The Crestwood Commons Special Homeowners Meeting was held on a Thursday evening in late February at the Millhaven Township Community Center. It's a beige municipal room. Fluorescent lights, stacking chairs, the specific smell of old coffee, and industrial carpet that clings to every public building in every small Ohio town. A folding table at the front, a whiteboard nobody ever uses. The kind of room where you sign forms for youth soccer leagues and attend informational sessions about recycling programs. 31 of Crestwood's 34 homeowners were there. That number matters. In 18 months of Meredith's presidency, the average meeting attendance was 9 people. Tonight, 31 showed up. The 3 absent were an elderly couple wintering in Florida, and Meredith's neighbor Linda, who had sent a signed proxy vote with Phil. Janelle from the Millhaven Courier was in the back row with a notebook. A stringer from the regional television station was there too. He'd been following the fire marshal's story and decided to see where it led. Deputy Fire Marshal Holt sat near the sidewall, present as an official observer. Meredith arrived in a blazer. She had a 3-ring binder, a printed agenda, and the expression of someone who had decided, against all available evidence, that this meeting was something she could still control. Rubin called the meeting to order. He read the legal basis, the Ohio Planned Community Act citation, the petition signature count, the notice verification, every household, every certified mail receipt, every date. Meredith raised her hand and challenged the meeting's validity before he finished the 3rd sentence. Rubin produced the documentation. He read from the statute. He set the certified mail log on the table. She challenged the easement's applicability to the gate dispute. Frances, seated quietly at the end of the table in a dark blazer, reached into her folder and slid the 2009 County Recorder's Plat to the center of the table without standing up. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Deputy Marshal Holt read a brief, prepared statement. The fire marshal's enforcement order was active and binding. The Knox box was a code requirement under state fire safety standards, and the emergency access easement was a matter of public record at the county recorder's office. Then Meredith stood up and gave a speech. I want to be fair about this. It was a real speech. She talked about property values. She talked about community standards and the importance of orderly governance. She talked about what happens to neighborhoods when individual homeowners decide the rules don't apply to them. She was composed and articulate, and in a different context, a context where she hadn't spent 18 months filing fraudulent liens and locking out fire trucks, it might have landed differently. When she finished, the room was quiet. I stood up. I didn't give a speech. I read from a list. The gate code change date. The incident report number from Phil's fire. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The date I called Bernice's office. The Ohio statute number. The lien amount. The certified mail dates for my objection letter. The easement recording date. 2009. The date the Knox box was installed. The date Pinnacle withdrew. The date Douglas resigned. I read it the way I read electrical specifications on a job site. Flat, methodical, without editorializing. Dates and numbers and statute citations. When I finished, I sat down. The fluorescent lights hummed. The vote was called. The motion to remove Meredith Calloway and Warren from the board. 29 in favor, 2 opposed. The 2 opposed votes were Meredith and Warren, who were still eligible to vote as homeowners. The motion to appoint an interim board. Myself, Phil, Constance, and 2 other neighbors. 30 in favor, 1 abstention. Warren abstained. Douglas, sitting near the back wall with no role in the proceedings, raised his hand to second the motion before it was called. Nobody made a big deal of it. The minutes recorded it. Meredith closed her binder. She stood. For a moment she looked at me across the table, and then at the room. Whatever she was looking for, she didn't find it. She picked up her things and left. The door closed. The fluorescent lights hummed on, indifferent and eternal. Phil stood up slowly, bad knees, careful, and addressed the room. He didn't have prepared remarks. He just said what he was thinking. I want to thank everybody here, but I especially want to thank the back gate. It was open tonight. He paused. That matters. The room applauded. Janelle wrote it down. The television stringer kept filming. I looked at the box, sitting on the table in front of me, rubber bands still on, sticky notes still readable. 8 inches. I took the sticky note off and put it in my pocket. The fraudulent lien was removed from my property record within 10 days by court order. Francis's fee-shifting motion was granted. Meredith paid $3,200 in attorney's fees out of her own pocket. The HOA's emergency security assessment was reversed. The 11 homeowners who had already paid it received full refunds from HOA reserves within 30 days. The fire marshal's enforcement requirements became permanent HOA policy, written into the governing documents at the interim board's first official meeting. Gate codes filed annually with the fire marshal's office. Knox box maintained and inspected every spring. The back access road formally designated as a permanent emergency access route per the 2009 easement. Bernice's office confirmed compliance in writing. She signed off on it herself. The Ohio Attorney General's consent order came through in April. The improperly noticed 2023 elections were voided. The board term extension was reversed. The $500 records request fee was eliminated. Crestwood Commons reran the affected votes under proper statutory notice. The results were not close. The basketball hoop stayed where it was. The interim board reviewed both of my prior violation files and determined, unanimously, in about 4 minutes, that neither measurement had been accurate. Both notices were formally rescinded. My property record was cleared. The hoop stands in the driveway today, exactly where it has always stood, and nobody has measured its proximity to the street since. 3 months after the special meeting, the new board, Phil, Constance, myself, and 2 neighbors, reviewed the HOA's reserve fund financials. Under Meredith's reporting, the balance had appeared to be just under $12,000. The actual balance, once the books were properly reconciled, was $41,000. We spent several weeks deciding what to do with the difference. We landed on 3 things. The first was the Crestwood Emergency Preparedness Fund, a small endowment administered in partnership with the Township Fire Department that provides fire extinguishers and carbon monoxide detectors to any homeowner in the subdivision at cost. In the first year, 22 households were equipped. The second was the Phil Dennison Good Neighbor Scholarship. Phil objected to the name for about 15 minutes, and then went quiet in the way people go quiet when they're genuinely moved and don't want to show it. $500 annually, awarded to a Millhaven Township High School senior pursuing a career in public safety, fire science, or emergency medicine. Co-sponsored by 3 local businesses. The first recipient was a 17-year-old from the east side of the township who wanted to be a paramedic. Phil handed her the check himself at the school's spring awards ceremony. He wore a tie. The third was the back gate block party, held every summer on the back access road itself. Folding tables, A couple of local food trucks, lawn chairs, the gate propped open at both ends. The first year, all 34 households came. 12 neighbors from adjacent streets heard about it and showed up anyway. Phil made chili. It was too spicy. Nobody complained. The following spring, I refinanced my house. The title came back clean. The bank officer asked if there had been any recent title issues. I said, nothing that wasn't resolved. Douglas ran for the open third board seat in the fall election. He won. He is, by general consensus, very good at reviewing financial documents, and considerably more cautious about co-signing anything. Meredith sold her house in August. The listing sat for about 3 weeks longer than the comparable properties that summer. We're sure that had nothing to do with anything. The Knox box is still on the stone pillar by the back gate. Bernice's office inspects it every spring. There's a bulletin board in the community center now. Reuben laminated it naturally, with the HOA governance calendar, the fire marshal contact number, and a small note at the bottom that reads, "The 2009 easement is on file at the county recorder's office. You can read it any time." $3. That's what it costs to pull a plat. $3 and the willingness to look.
So here's where it all landed. Renata lost her breath. So here's where it landed. Renata lost her presidency, lost her title, lost the HOA reverse fund she had been draining for 6 years. $73,000 paid to her brother's company for work was never done. The civil suit settled. The felony investigation opened. The gate she used to block my Hamas crew read up by the county, propped open, never closed again, and Claudia's headaches, gone. First week after remediation, gone. Here's what I want you to take from this. Daniel didn't win because he got lucky. He won because he read the documents, called the right people, and didn't flinch. The law was already on his side. He just had to learn where to fight it. Most HOA police count on you not doing that. They count on you getting frustrated and walking away. Don't walk away. If you're sitting on your own HOA nightmare right now, pull out of your declaration of confidence tonight. The answer you need is probably already in there. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this one hit home, subscribe. New story every week. Same promise. Somebody plays stupid game. Somebody wins stupid prize. See you next time.